Hi, I'm Michael Tapes. In this video, we're going to explore how to interpret the graph that FocusTune puts out. So here's a graph representing a series of shots on an Nikon camera where looks like 4 or 5 shots were taken at fine-tuned settings of -20, -15, -10, -5, 0, etc. across this. And if you think of the zero line of the graph as being the focus plane that we want, where we focused, and if you think of sort of looking down on the scene, the dots that are below in the graph represent front focusing, where we focused in front of the target, and the dots behind the zero line or above the zero line represent back focus. Let me show you this kind of in 3D, and maybe it'll give you a different perspective. So if you think about this in space, where these dots are sort of behind and these are in front of a zero line, and let me put LensAlign behind that, and now you can sort of see, not perfectly, but you get the idea. We focused on this on the focus target, so we expected that plane where it intersects here to be across the zero line. Okay, so if we see the focus towards the front of the ruler, the graph would put the dots towards the front, and if towards the back of the ruler would be towards the back. Okay, so we're kind of looking down on the graph. So having seen that, now let's just take a look at the graph by itself. So we know that the shots on the bottom, so we know that that the camera out of the box, which is to say with the fine-tuning set at 0, was front focusing, because we expected it to focus here, and it's focusing here in front. So in other words, we expected the zero line of lens. We focused on the target, so we expected that focus plane to extend across here at the zero line, but it ended up focusing up front because the camera is front focusing. You focus here, and the focus that the camera does is in front, and that's the error that we're trying to correct. Okay, so at 0, the focus should have been here, and it's in front, and that's what we're calibrating by doing. Focus, autofocus fine-tune, or autofocus micro adjustment in the Canon speak. It's the same thing for Canon calls it micro adjustment and Nikon calls it fine-tune. I call it AFA, autofocus adjustment, just so we can be generic. So out of the box, this camera would have shot very soft and blurry shots, very much front focused. And by testing at all the different fine-tuned settings, all the different AFA settings, autofocus adjustment settings, we can see that the best settings tended to be in this +10 to +15 range. Okay, but people ask me, what does this 77% zero line accuracy mean? Well, let's examine that. We'll zoom in on this area right here between the 10 and 15. Okay, and these green dots represent each shot, so it looks like there are 4 shots taken at, let me bring this down, at +10, and 4 shots taken at +15. So here's what happens. The sharpest shot, FocusTune measures the sharpest shot as this green dot where my cursor is now. And the next sharpest shot that was in front of the focus, that was front focusing, was this shot. And the next sharpest shot towards the back was this shot. So the problem is that FocusTune and LensAlign, and nobody knows how sharp this lens could potentially be, because all the shots that are outside these red lines are less sharp than the shots that are inside the red lines. And inside the red lines, well, there's not a lot of shots, and they vary. Now, this is the sharpest shot, but that doesn't mean that the real sharpest shot might be might be here, where my cursor is, or here. We know it's someplace in between the red lines, but we don't know that it's here. Okay, we just know that somewhere in this range, we know this one was very sharp, this is the next sharpest, this is the next sharpest, and those are the three sharpest, but we don't know where it's going to fall. And that makes sense because let's say that the camera performs optimally at plus 13, just as a guess. Well, that's where the sharp shots are going to be. So if we took 100 shots, hopefully the sharpest ones would be at plus 13 and they would all be here. But given that we've shot so few shots, we don't know where the sharpest shot's going to be. Because for any given lens and body and lighting circumstance and did the camera shake and all the variables, there's no absolute to know how sharp it can be. So all LensAlign and Focus Tune can do is see what is the sharpest that we've got so far. It doesn't know how sharp it can get. And that's why we don't have a solid zero line, and that's why we're saying that the zero accuracy is 77%. The number is arbitrary. We don't know if it's 77% or 80%. We've come up with an algorithm that's just representative. You can just see by the spread of the lines here that with this number of shots, we know that the sharpest shot is going to tend to be in here, but we don't know where it is. So we give you that spread. And it's not a number you have to, think about crazily, because let's look at this next example that I bring in. Now here, this is a different camera, different circumstance. We're shooting at integral fine-tuned settings, -7, -6, -5, -4, -3. And the sharpest looks like it's going to tend to be in between -5 and -6. Well, there is no in between -5 and -6. So all we can say is for this number of pictures that were taken, that these are where, all we can say is that for this number of pictures that were taken, this is the sharpest one, but maybe the sharpest one will end up being here or here. And maybe if we took 100 shots, they would be, the sharpest ones would be from -5, or maybe they'd be from -6, or maybe they would be equal. But all we know is that it's going to be somewheres in here. And also, by viewing in Focus Tune, the actual focus mask and the ruler, the actual focus on the ruler, you'll see that the difference between these shots is probably very minimal, and it probably doesn't matter. The graph is all comparative, so it doesn't mean that this is an out of focus shot and this is an out of focus shot. It just means that this is sharper than these, and it means that this is focused further back from this, and this is focused further front from these. So we have two things. We have the order of the shots from back focus to front focus, and then we have how sharp they are. And the closer they are to the zero lines, the sharper they are. So in this case, I would just take more shots in the -5 and -6 range and see what happens. And it probably doesn't even matter because the shots are going to be, random when you're taking them, and they're probably not that far apart. Check once again in Focus Tune, look at the sharpest shots, and then look at the surrounding shots and see how the ruler looks. So I hope that gives you a clearer understanding of what the graph means and how to interpret it.